Welcome to 5 after midnight. I'm watching you. Number 1.
When I was about 13 or 14, my family went on a small vacation. It's not something we do very often, but when we did, it was always somewhere not too far away, and my parents still tried their hardest to give my little sister and I a good time. So my little sister could not have been older than 7. We were staying in a big hotel in a resort town. It was in the USA, not a shady area at all, but lots of tourists. Our hotel room was on the first floor, and we had grown up in a wholesome small town. This may or may not be relevant, but basically we were not used to being so concerned about security. After a big day of sightseeing and whatnot, we retire to our hotel room and go to bed. My sister and I were sleeping next to each other by the door, and my parents had the bed by the window. When I woke up, I felt the need to tell my parents about a strange dream I had. I had imagined that a tall, thin man, maybe in his 30s, came silently into our hotel room through the door. He then proceeded to meticulously search through our things, suitcase, dresser drawers, etc., while paying us absolutely no heed. He did this quickly and purposefully, with the utmost silence and concentration. I couldn't tell if he took anything or what he was doing, but when he was done, he looked over the bed and his eyes lingered on my sister. I didn't think to do anything this entire time, and I honestly don't think I could have moved if I tried. It was like one of those dreams where you try to run, but everything is numb, and you just end up falling over. Except I was already lying down, so I couldn't do a thing. He blinked, quickly turned his head, and walked out. As I was relating this tale to my parents the next morning, we were just about to laugh it off as a silly dream. But then my sister sits up and asks me, "Did the man have a nice white shirt and a beard like Daddy?" Mother of God, he did. I tell her so, and she claps her hands all excitedly. "I had the same dream too." At this point, I was a little uneasy, and my parents were sort of freaking out. They were trying to hide it, but I could tell. My sister thought this was a super cool thing, and I began to ask her more details about this dream. The coincidences were just too uncanny. I asked her, "Did he make any sound at all?" "Nope, he was quiet as a mouse," she would answer. Understand at this point, she is smiling and excited and thinking this was awesome. "Where did he come from?" "The door, silly," she would answer. At this point, my parents scolded me to stop that, and I'll admit I was getting pretty freaked out too. When my sister said that, Mom goes to the room door and secures it with the deadbolt. At that point, I realized we had never actually locked it. I can tell that they are both pretty freaked out, but trying to hide it. Mom turns on cartoons, pulls cereal out of the snack bin, and tries to distract my sister, as Dad and I carefully go through all our things, but nothing is missing. I couldn't tell if my stuff looked tampered with. I didn't notice what arrangement my clothes were in when I threw them into my suitcase. So in the end, nothing bad happened, and mostly for the sake of my little sister. We brushed it off pretty quickly and tried to have another fun day. She had no idea anything could have been wrong, and honestly, we don't even know if this was real or not, or if my sister was even telling the truth. It was just so surreal. I don't see how she could have made that stuff up. She was so young. Either way, though, we changed rooms that night, and from then on, whenever we stayed in a hotel, it's never on the first floor, and no one forgets to secure the deadbolt.
Number 2.
A few years back, I was laying in bed reading a book when I hear a loud thump come from downstairs. I mean, loud enough to shake the floor beneath me. I stop and wait and listen. I assume it's my grandparents because my grandfather has a bad leg and kind of limps. It happens again, more frequently, like someone is limping really, really heavily. I get out of bed, kind of annoyed, and go to my grandparents' room across the hall. I shine my light in there. Both grandparents are sound asleep. I hear the thump again and the floor shakes some more. So, I try to use logic again. The cats are fucking around, right? Well, fuck me. One cat is asleep in my sister's empty bedroom, and the other was sitting in my closet looking mildly annoyed that I disturbed him. Thump, thump, thump. Fuck. Fine. I'll go downstairs. Alarmed with a shitty prepaid Nokia phone and my lack of balls, I'll go downstairs. As soon as I hit the bottom step and open the door, for some reason we have a door at the bottom of the steps, the thumping stops. Just stops. Like a bad horror movie. It keeps being obnoxious until I touch the doorknob. I check the locks, check the house, give a good shout, like that would scare off a serial killer, then run back upstairs. I go to bed with my door locked that night. The next morning, I ask my grandparents, hoping to God that it was a dream, if they heard the thumping, or if one of them had gone downstairs the night before. They say no, and told me that they had woken up presumably after I went to bed, or at least when I was back in my room, and thought it was me thumping around for at least a good half hour. I went to the bathroom where the basement door was, and it was open. We keep our basement door locked with both a chain lock and a regular lock at all times due to our cats. You can access my house from the outside via the basement. No sleep was had after that for at least a week. I'm still paranoid about people getting into my house.
Number 3.
When I was about 6 months pregnant, my boyfriend called me and told me he would be working late. I went to bed without him, being way too tired to stay awake. At some point in the night, I felt him climb into bed next to me and put his arm around me, so I snuggled into him and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up early and turned over. He wasn't in the bed, but his side of the bed wasn't made. So I got up and figured he was already awake and somewhere inside the house. I walked through the house and called his name and couldn't find him. Finally, I got my shoes on and went outside to see if maybe he was out there. I found him in our front yard with his best friend cleaning frogs that they had apparently caught to make frog legs. I asked him what time he got home, and he told me that he got home around 3 a.m. And when he got home, his friend had wanted to go frogging as soon as he pulled in, and his friend met him and they left. I laughed and said, "Yeah, right. You must have come inside." And he said, "Nope." After I realized he was serious, and him and his friend were staring at me, I felt completely freaked out. I told him that someone had crawled into bed with me that night and even cuddled with me while I fell back asleep. They both stared at me like I was crazy and said he definitely never came inside. To this day, I am still freaked out by that. Who the hell was in my bed?
Number 4.
When I was in elementary school, I was one of the first stops to be picked up for the bus. One day, a bus that was different than our usual one stopped. Being a kid, I didn't think anything of it. We'd had substitutes before. So I hopped on. It had been a little early, so a few stops didn't have all their kids. That was just luck of the draw. After the last stop, there was maybe about half the usual kids. Again, I'm like the third grade. I don't really question it. I just continue playing a little game with some friends. When we got to school, the driver hands one of the fifth graders the substitute note. Basically, it's a checklist of the route stop, confirming that the bus went past them all. Later, everyone who rode that bus got called down and questioned at the principal's office. There were police officers and somebody from the school board there too. Apparently the bus we got was not registered with anyone and no one knew who the bus driver was. Literally, the police could not find a record of the name. However, the usual bus had gone on its route and had picked up the other half of the kids. They were sitting toward the back half of the bus, which was typical. That's where everyone always wanted to be. However, the bus had suffered brake failure and had been struck by a second bus at an intersection. The front half of both buses were pretty mangled, and both drivers had to be airlifted to the hospital. However, because there weren't students at the front of the bus, no child suffered major injury. We still don't know where that first bus came from.
Number 5.
Back when my mother was about 18, she was visited by what she calls the tapper. Every night for 3 months, someone would tap on the window of the room she was in as soon as she was alone. Even with the curtains drawn. Every single night, without fail. As soon as anyone else came into the room or went outside to investigate, it would stop, and no one would be outside. My grandpa and both my uncles were living inside the house too. After 3 months of the tapping, it stopped. My grandpa and both uncles decided to take off fishing one night. The tapping hadn't happened in 2 weeks at this point, and my mom stayed behind. The sun had just gone down, and my mom was sitting in the living room reading, and it happens. Tap, 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 tap. She assumes it's my younger uncle because he's a joker. "Jesse, knock it off." Tap, 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 tap. "Jesse, it's not funny, just get inside." Tap, tap, tap. She gets up from the couch and goes to the window, which still has the curtains drawn. "Very funny, Jessie." She taps on the window through the curtain. Tap, 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 tap. Instead of tapping, it sounds like a hand slams against the window in response. She goes back to the couch, still convinced it's my uncle, and almost immediately the phone rings. My grandpa is calling her from the neighbor's house to tell her that they stopped in to say hi, and the neighbors offered to help them dress the fish. My mom says, "Well, take Jesse back there with you and make him stop slamming on the windows." My grandpa answers, "Rhonda, Jesse is here." Oh shit. She runs to the front door and locks it, leaving the phone off the hook. My grandpa says they're coming over and hangs up. It takes them about a minute to run up the road from the neighbors. When they get there, they see a guy standing by the front window in the bushes. He stands up and they start screaming and take off toward the fence. This guy looks like he's a good 7 feet tall, for what my grandpa told me. They chase him to the property line where a wooden fence separates from the next neighbor's property, and he jumps over the fence, which is 7 feet high. No hands, legs completely over the top. They clamber over the fence to keep chasing him, and he can't be more than 1 to 2 seconds ahead of the 3 of them, and he's gone. Straight up gone. The property on that side of the fence was just dirt and grass, no trees or buildings. The neighbor's house was a long distance from the fence, and nothing else was around to hide in. They never heard the tapping or saw anyone that looked like this guy ever again.